Throughout this conference, we've heard from a very wide range of speakers talking about the need for Christ-centred education. And I think that's crucially important within Scotland, as we do have a lack of Christ-centred education. But another part of education is looking at what has gone wrong with Scottish public education and how we can avoid that through homeschooling or independent schools. Now, before we start, I think some of you maybe don't know me. I'll introduce myself. I'm Euan Morrice. I'm an accountant and part-time farmer in the northeast of Scotland, and I'm the northeast chair of the Scottish Family Party. I was publicly schooled myself, and my interest in politics was present from quite a young age. If I'm being honest, it was more an interest in arguing with people and rather than politics. I really loved arguing, loved a good argument, and I would go as far as saying the sky was green if it would elicit a response for someone, you know. When I was in secondary, about the time of Trump's first presidential bid, I was asked to write an essay for an English class about one of my heroes. I think some of you can see where I'm going with this. My English teacher hated Trump with a passion. And so I wrote about how Trump was my hero and listed all his notable achievements. Best bit about it is I'm not even a big Trump fan. I wouldn't admire the guy. I just really wanted to wind her up. But anyways, I'm digressing. Throughout my time in secondary, I witnessed a controlled decline in educational attainment quality and a substantial rise in violence in schools. This is one of the main reasons I got involved in politics, because I want to see these issues solved and I want to try and help give those solutions. Scottish education was once the gold standard, unrivaled around the world, and it was used as a comparator for other education systems of how to do education right. Today, that is not the case. Violence rates are through the roof. Attainment is falling at a drastic rate, dilution of grade quality, and a curriculum that is frankly not fit for purpose. Our once unrivaled education system is at best now below average. I'd say there are 4 main reasons as to why the education system has taken such a hit. The first of these is the curriculum for excellence. The curriculum was brought in around 2011, phased in slowly, and it took the existing standards, which were rather rigorous, and replaced them with 4 key competencies, which is successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors. You may have noticed that only one of these actually relates to learning, and the other 3 relate to soft skills. The issue with this is the focus is on learner experience, to the point that actually learning and learning core competencies takes a back seat. Children are asked constantly how they feel about things, rather than actually teaching them what they should know. On top of this, the guidance is just so woolly, and I'm not referring to the fact that kids are now pretending to be animals. That's a talk for a different time. CFE is packed with vaguely defined goals, which are entirely up to teacher interpretation. I'll give you a few examples. I'm going to read you 2 different sets. We'll do this like a classroom environment. It'll be hands up to. So you've got to pick out which one is the Scottish curriculum out of the 2 options. So here's the first one. This is for mathematics. Perform geometric proofs involving rectilinear figures with appropriate symbols, terminology, and reasons. Or the other option is, I have worked with others to research a famous mathematician and the work they are known for, or investigated a mathematical topic and have prepared and delivered a short presentation. Now, hands up who thinks the first one was the Scottish curriculum. Funny enough, I see no hands. Who thinks the second one was the Scottish? There we go. I see plenty of hands. That's correct. The worst bit about this is that the Scottish option is for 3rd level. So this is S1 to S3. So it's just so vague and so poorly worded. The first one is actually from Hong Kong, from their mathematics curriculum. Here's another example from physics. So the first option is, so the subject is wave motion. So learn about amplitude, wavelength, and frequency relating to velocity, to frequency and wavelength. Learning about transverse and longitudinal waves. Learning about electromagnetic waves and their velocity in a vacuum, etc., etc., etc. It goes on for quite a while. Or the other option, I think you see the pattern here. I can monitor the environment by collecting and analysing samples. I can interpret the results to inform others about levels of pollution and express a considered opinion on how science can help to protect our environment. So, who thinks the first one was Scottish? No hands again. Who thinks the second one was Scottish? You're noticing a pattern, and the worst bit about it is that the first example was from England and Wales, and their curriculum isn't much better than ours. So that's the first problem with Scottish education. The second one is soft skills, and I call this soft skills for soft learners. As part of this new curriculum, there was a shift away from the established educational theory, which states that learning through knowledge is how you prepare youngsters for the future, and a move towards mushy modern theory, which suggests that transferable skills are much more important than actually learning knowledge and accumulating knowledge. This is justified. You'll usually hear them say, the jobs of the future haven't been created yet, so we can't prepare for them. That's been true for all of human history. You know, new jobs come about and old jobs go away, but the core principles of STEM subjects are what prepare you for the future. For example, English builds your communication and writing skills. Maths develops critical thinking, it develops problem solving, taking already existing solutions and tailoring them to a completely new situation. PE and music can teach teamwork, cooperation, such as playing in a band. These are not skills that one needs to teach kids to use. These are skills which kids accumulate through experience, through subjects, and by applying it from one subject to another. The third problem with Scottish education, mini bureaucrats. So this is turning children into mini bureaucrats, paper-pushing bureaucrats. Children in public schools are required to spend an ever-increasing amount of time each week filling in paperwork instead of learning. Scottish kids are expected to fill their own experiences and their own successful outcomes onto paperwork, which is likely to never see the light of day again. Why focus on writing down what kids have learned and how they feel? Why not actually just teach them? Number 4, the fourth and final problem with Scottish education, although there are many more. I've just limited it to 4 because I'm tight for time. Lack of punishment and a lack of character development. Part of education that's crucial is character education. It's teaching children how to be respectful, punctual, and responsible. This involves a process of reward and discipline. For example, a uniform policy, while it may seem unimportant to the student, is an element of character building, learning respect and the ability to follow commands. Not only that, it's a way for schools to enforce equality, so that no matter the background of the child, they're all dressed the same, no one's wearing designer clothes, no one's going to be shamed for, wearing the wrong clothes. Nowadays, Scottish schools will actually let children vote to remove their own school uniforms from school, in a move which almost always ends the way you think. Schools across the country are now phasing out detentions and suspensions. Expulsions are now unheard of. In my home council of Moray, not a single child was expelled last year or suspended. Was this because they're all good as gold? Well, no, it wasn't, because there were over 1,400 recorded incidents last year, with the violence reports up 214% and attacks with a weapon up 277% in 5 years. Yet, 0 suspensions. Another thing which seeks to destroy character building in Scottish schools is the mindset that everyone's a winner. Sports days and prize givings must ensure that every child gets something to prevent a tantrum. When I was a child, I was a bit of a sore loser, I will admit. I maybe am today a wee bit, but I'm ashamed to admit it. But the way that was resolved and the way that I've got better at that was by losing. And learning to lose gracefully, that's something that children will never lose if you just hand them a trophy no matter what. And what you see that today with children is that they have a real attitude problem when it comes to losing things. So the real question comes, how do we solve this? And frankly, I think the Scottish Family Party has the solutions, but I might be slightly biased considering I'm their North East chair. But schools should focus on academic rigour, with options for more vocational training where appropriate. Currently, the curriculum provides insufficient challenge for the academically strong and forces the less academic to persevere with abstract study when more practical courses could be more beneficial. There are two philosophies behind education, progressive and traditional. The progressive approach emphasises skills, group work, exploration and creativity. The traditional focuses more on discipline, knowledge, formal teaching and objective testing. Most would see some value in each approach, seeking a sensible balance. The Scottish Government, however, is convinced that the only approach is through progressive policy. The CFE should be abandoned. It draws all of the worst aspects of modern educational theory. It elevates subjective learner experience over teaching and undermines the intellectual authority of teachers and parents. It attempts to blur the boundaries between subjects and is founded upon the idea that education is to build pupils' confidence and self-esteem rather than actually teaching. Objective feedback and grading that enables pupils and parents to understand the level of attainment should be available at all levels in senior education. And data should not be withheld from parents. Parents should know what is going on within their schools. Not only that, we should be giving kids as much time as possible to pass exams when it comes to time. So exams should move into June rather than the current situation where they're in May. The so-called attainment gap should not be a focus for government. They shouldn't be trying to address problems which are much deeper rooted in society by watering down grades or by artificially inflating other grades. You know, we know that the poorer areas struggle to attain the most, but that's not a problem you address by diluting the quality of education across the board. And I would actually argue that bringing Christ back to Scotland would address a lot of these problems, but that's maybe a talk for a different time as well. You know, lessons in critical thinking and logic unrelated to the contemporary political and social issues should be provided within academies and high schools. Intelligently navigating the current deluge of contradictory, unreliable, biased and superficially pervasive content is a vital ability that children should be learning. They should be learning how to think critically, as well as possibly introducing a kind of qualification within like decorum and punctuality and kind of respect and life skills. I would say that we should have a qualification to learn how to treat others with respect there. Behaviour, I think schools should take a zero tolerance to violence and abuse. I think schools these days, there's so many cases. I'll give you some examples from Moray where there have been teachers hit, kicked, punched. One was bitten by a pupil that drew blood, and there were no punishments from this because there is a focus in education on kind of restorative process. And there's an element of restorative process that's needed, but there's also an element of punishment that is needed, and there's an element of telling kids when they do something wrong, because kids aren't always right, we know that, and pretending that they're always right and trying to understand why they do things is never going to end well. I'll leave you with, I know I'm eating into your lunchtime, and I'm going to try and avoid that, and so I'll leave you with just a wee quote here from Matthew 28, and this is the Great Commission. I'm sure everyone's very familiar with it. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. And I think the key bit there is, and teaching them. And God commands us to teach faithfully to others the Word of God and to teach them the ways of all things holy, but also to teach our children. And I think it's important that we understand, we go, therefore we go and we go and teach. And so I'd like to thank you for your time.